Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode of the 2022 year of the E Squared MMA podcast. We're going to be giving you the main card of UFC 270, headlined by the heavyweight unification bout between Francis Ngannou and Ciryl Gane. Co-main is the flyweight title bout, the trilogy, wrapping up Brandon Moreno versus Deiveson Figueiredo. And as always, joined by my co-host, Eric LaRochelle.
How we doing, everyone? Let's get into it.
So before I start, LaRochelle and I are disappointed. This card had some good fights that fell out. It's not the best card overall besides the two main events. Other than that, it's really hard to look forward to it, but nonetheless, it is a UFC pay-per-view, so there are going to be some good fights. With that, we're going to get started. There's only 4 fights so far on the main card confirmed. We're going to start at bantamweight. Number 15th ranked Cody Stamen plus 170 versus Nurmagomedov. No relation to Khabib, minus 200.
Yeah, Cody Stamen, and there's not a lot to say about this guy, at least in my opinion. He's one of the most boring fighters on the card. I don't believe he's earned the spotlight. I'm going to go ahead and say it, but we'll give you a little background. He's 19-4-1. He's only won 1 out of his last 3 in the UFC. Another testament, he's got no business under the bright lights. His stats are very similar to Saeed, very rudimentary, average fighter, in my opinion. He beat Brian Kelleher and then drawed with Song Yadong, both in lackluster bouts. But he's lost to Jimmy Rivera and Marib Davalishi, most recently by decision. 9 out of his last 10 fights went to decision. So this is going to be a tough one to talk about because I already don't like this guy.
Yeah, Cody Stamen is one of the most boring fighters. The reason being his stand-up is pretty terrible, and his wrestling, he's more than happy to get on top of you and just lay there. With that being said, Saeed, though, with his last name, Nurmagomedov, folks, I want you to know he is nothing like Khabib. If you know, one of our favorite fighters, Zabit, is his training partner. Saeed brings the Zabit gang. Watch out for the spinning kicks. He loves the spinning back fist. I think in the last fight when I was watching tape, I think he threw it probably 10 times in the first round, and he connects every time. His wrestling is okay. I mean, he's Dagestani, but nothing crazy. His stand-up is insane. He's 14-2, and that's a bullshit 14-2 because his last loss to Raoni Barcelos in Korea, he completely won that fight, and somehow the judges gave it to Raoni. I don't know why. With that being said, Saeed is minus 200. The over-under is probably 2.5. I would say the safe bet is the over. I don't think either of these guys are going to finish each other. I think Saeed wins just because he's leaps and bounds above with his hands. Cody Stamen is terrible in the hands and with the ground game. I mean, you're going against a Dagestani to begin with, so I don't see how you can say you have an advantage in wrestling to begin with.
Yeah, he's climbing, an uphill battle, and I'm glad you brought that up, that Nurmagomedov trains with Zabit. Exactly. He's one of our favorite fighters, and if they're spending time in the camp together, I'm going to be on your side with this. Definitely take the over 2.5 because Cody, out of his last 10 or 15 fights, the only one that didn't go to decision was a submission loss to Aljamain Sterling. And so Saeed's a safe bet here and definitely over. And so the exciting part of the fights, I think it's just going to come from one end, and that's Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, I would definitely. This fight's going to be fun if Saeed gets to stay on the feet and do what he wants. Now, I will say if Cody does have some luck and gets him to the ground, this is going to be a brutal 15 minutes of just laying on the ground, doing absolutely nothing. Cody Stamen's not my favorite fighter to begin with. He's very boring, but he is ranked. He is legit. He's not had his luck lately, and it's not going to get any easier. Saeed Nurmagomedov is legit. Zabit, he trains with him. Mark Henry up in New Jersey. Great stand-up. So definitely watch out for Saeed on the feet. He'll be interesting to watch. Like I said, a lot of spinning attacks, a lot of hip movement, but the over is probably the safe bet. Cody has a pretty good chin. I don't see Saeed knocking him out, and I definitely don't see Cody finishing this fight early. So if you want Saeed by decision, it's probably a good one, minus 200. I don't really like those odds, but yeah, that's a quick fight for y'all.
Yeah, that's enough said.
So next we have Michel Pereira versus Andre Fialho. Fialho is stepping in 10 days notice. This is his UFC debut. The odds aren't even out yet, but I would guess Michel's probably like -300 and Fialo's probably +250.
Nope. Yeah, I saw him not too long ago. Michel Pereira's -280. And I think that's generous. I think, yeah, you're right on. I think that's generous, especially guys making his debut, who he's fighting against in 10-day notice. And you're the third fight on the main card with 2 belts right after you. A little bit about Michel Pereira. He's one of the most exciting fighters. So it's a complete turn of the last fight. He's very eccentric and unique in his striking and the way his movements. But he's 26-11. He takes risks. I think that 11 shows that he's not one to just go out there and lose a fight without giving it his all. High risk, high reward sometimes. He's won 3 out of his last 3 in the UFC. He beat Chaos Williams and Nico Price most recently. Although they both went to decisions, they were very, very exciting fights. Both men are around 6 feet tall and have a similar reach. And like I said, the danger Pereira possesses is his unpredictability. On his feet and on the ground. He's just he's a tough guy to train for in general.
Yeah, and so Andre Fialho, like I said, he's making his UFC debut. He's been fighting in UAE Warriors recently. He's riding a 4-fight win streak, all by knockouts. First one was in last year around this time against James Vick. Those of you that know OG James Vick, he knocked him out in round 2. Next, he knocked out Son Hon Yu, round 1, 20 seconds in. Next, he knocked out Lincoln Puig at the very end of round 1. And then last, he knocked out Stefan Sekulik, who used to fight in the UFC, knocked him out in round 1. The things I could gather about Andre Fialho is he has power. He has a lot of power, and he's a very good boxer. With that being said, he's still young. And the only thing that's hesitant is, like Larshel said, is Michel Pereira's style is really hard to gauge. It's just a really weird, you don't usually see it in the octagon to begin with. So for you to come in 10 days is going to be really hard to find someone to replicate that, because to fight Michel, you kind of need a full training camp so you can kind of gauge that. The one thing I will say about Michel is he does fade. He doesn't have a good gas tank, and he's willing to just, I wouldn't say give up, but he definitely slows down. In the Nico Price fight, he did win that. But if you go back and watch round 3, Nico Price had him close to finishing him. So how would you go about determining what the bettors should do with this one? Because I have a few ideas.
Yeah. What's the over on the rounds? Because that's a pivotal point.
1.5.
1.5. They really nailed it with that. I think if Pereira finishes it, it's definitely going to be probably right at that 1.5. Could be in the first, because like 10 days notice, this other guy's riding a nice win streak, but you know, the spotlights of the UFC sometimes get to people like that. And I don't know. He's so explosive in the first, second round. It's tough to tell, but I would take Pereira by knockout. I think -280 is a fair number. So, I mean, this other guy, he's got a great record, and he's been knocking the who's who out in other promotions, but he's under the spotlight now. And it'd be a lot to overcome, but this sort of dynamic style that Pereira has, and the unpredictability of this other guy that comes in on 10 days notice, there's a recipe for fireworks. You know, this could be one of those dog fights that we don't see coming, but could be, you know, a blast for the fans.
Yeah, I think with this fight, how I would see it is Michel has the advantage through round 1 and probably halfway through the round 2, that under. I think if it goes later, I'm going to give it to Fialo, because the fights I watch, he has a gas tank. I'm not going to lie. I was watching the PFL fight. He fought Chris Curtis. For those of you that know Chris Curtis, about 3 years ago when he was still really young, Chris Curtis beat him, knocked him out in the 3rd round. And Fialo was getting peppered the whole fight, and he stood tall and he kept coming forward. So he definitely has a gas tank. So I'm going to give him the advantage in the later rounds. The over under is hard with the 1.5. I think it's 1.5. If it's 2.5, take the under of 2.5, because like Larshel said, the UFC spotlight can kind of get big for some of these guys, and they forget kind of some of their training, and they come out swinging hard, loose, which is not something you want to do against Michel, who can easily clip you and turn your lights off. And that's not to say Fialo can't clip him either. With that being said, if you want a dog to bet on, you could sprinkle Fialo. Now, I'm not saying this is like a lock of a dog, but with that amount, he's what, plus 300, you said?
He is plus 230 and Pereira is minus 280.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to touch Michel Pereira's money line at minus 280 because that's just asking for him to get knocked out in the first. That's usually how it goes if you're going to bet on a favorite like that. So I would sprinkle Fialo and then definitely check the over under. The 1.5 one, if they do that, then they definitely nailed it because that's going to probably be the turning point of the fight. If you can find an over under for 2.5, take the under because I honestly don't see this fight going to the judges' scorecard just because Michel could catch him early with Fialo still gauging how to fight in the UFC. And then if not, Michel does get tired. And if Fialo's still around, he has real power and he can easily end this. I just don't see how either of these guys go to a decision.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I like the dog in Fialo because the same goes for Pereira. He doesn't have much to work off of, stepping in on 10 days notice and trying to replicate a guy who yeah, has amazing striking and can hold his own in that regard. So yeah, I think you're right in that minus 280. Do not take that money line because it's too unpredictable of a fight. But if those rounds, yeah, like you said, 2.5, I would even stay safe and be at 2 for the over under. I think taking the under is a smart bet on this one.
Yeah. So, well, those two were quick wrap ups. Now we get into the real fights. We have the co-main, the trilogy fight, the final dot, I guess you could say, in this these two's legacy together. The flyweight title bout, we have the champion Brandon Moreno minus 180 versus Deiveson Figueiredo plus 155.
Well, goodness, if because they had a win, a draw, and then this wins, or this could go, if Moreno wins again, that's 1-1-1 between the two. So I don't even know if they do above trilogies a 4 fight, but we don't know how this is going to go, right? Brandon Moreno minus 175, like you said, flyweight champion, 19-5-2. He won 5 out of his last 5 in the UFC minus that draw, but really coming into his prime at 28 years old. I feel the trilogy fight is where Moreno looked exceptional in all areas. It was a completely different fighter, in my opinion, than the one with the draw. His striking was way more crisp. He was landing first. It reminded me kind of like how Juliana Pena stuck it to Nunes early and quick, and then just came around and got the submission when it was available. Because I think Figueiredo had no idea where he was midway through that second or third round whenever it ended. So this becomes Figueiredo's fight on what he has to do to improve and change his game plan up completely because he didn't see the same fighter in Moreno as he did their previous bout.
Yeah, I love that comparison you made to the Pena Nunes fight. I didn't even think of that, but that's honestly how it went. Dana kind of said it a little bit, and I kind of might have agreed with this. I think Figueiredo might have just been looking past Moreno in a sense, wasn't really taking him seriously, which caught him off guard. And also, Figueiredo struggles to make this weight to begin with, which gasses him out. Now, with that being said, Brandon Moreno looked at 10 out of 10. You could give it an 11 out of 10 for that performance, that submission. Submitting Deiveson Figueiredo, who is a black belt as well, is no easy task.
High level.
Yeah, that's really high level. With that being said, though, Figueiredo posted a picture about 2 weeks ago looking absolutely shredded. And I saw the weigh-ins today, and he got on the scale. He ran to the scale and then shouted something in Brazilian off the scale. So with that, I'm thinking he figured out his diet and he figured out this weight cut, which could be a problem. And Dana kind of alluded to that, saying like, Figueiredo's no joke. He goes in there to rip people's heads off, and he might have just looked past Moreno, didn't really do the diet that serious, gassed himself out. But make no mistake, what he looked like on this scale is a fucking legit 125-pound champion. And I think that that's going to lend leaps and bounds to him because even though Moreno's the champion, the fact that you can get Deiveson Figueiredo at plus 155 lends me to take Deiveson Figueiredo at plus 155. I think that was a huge gut punch to him to lose to Moreno.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, the way he looked, he did look shredded. He came out running. He came yelling. That could be a scare tactic. That could be a poker face. I'll be the devil's advocate here because we all know that Moreno has zero problem making 125. He can go all the 5 rounds. And in my notes, that to me, that's the X factor. was how was Deiveson, how he handled the weight cut, and looks may be deceiving. We don't know. He's shredded, he's yoked, but he probably wants that much more in his head to prove why that last fight was a fluke. And we know how Moreno can just hang around and hang in fights, and that could be a huge adrenaline dump for a guy like Figueiredo coming in that regard. These men are very similar in size with this trilogy fight, and I think whoever makes the necessary adjustments are definitely going to win. If I'm Moreno, I don't have to think I have to change too much. When he came out and he's swinging first and he's sticking to his game plan, it makes him worry less about what Figueiredo is going to do, because the way he implemented it last time, he looked more agile, more fast. And although he's the smaller fighter, he was using all his tools and to break it out all the stops. And that's how he got the victory early. So I do agree that Figueiredo being the underdog here, that's a safe bet too. Might be the smart one, but I'm on Team Moreno on this. I just love everything about the guy. Hard worker, first Mexican champion. I don't have a negative thing to say about him. I think this is going to be another barn burner of a fight, and God forbid there's going to be a fourth one, because I'd tune into that as well.
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake, this division is the flyweight division is pretty carved out under these two, so it's kind of hard to see who would even be able to challenge. And yeah, I 100% agree with what La Rochelle said regarding Moreno. He is basically the opposite of Figueiredo in the sense that he doesn't look intimidating. He's always smiling. He's always nice, but his work ethic and his ability in the cage to just do whatever it takes to win the fight. He has that underdog mentality, that Mexican mentality. He really embraces the Mexican, the dirty boxing, the inside, the dirtiness. Which lends me also to take, if you want to take Moreno, he is the champ. He wants to keep that belt. I know that means a lot to him. It really changed his gym in Tijuana. He said he's trying to get MMA to be bigger in Mexico just because soccer is the national sport. And boxing, Canelo. So this one, you could stay away from betting on this and enjoy it as a fan if you want to, because enjoying this fight as a fan is going to be legit. I'm hoping, because it could be that Moreno comes out with a 10 out of 10 performance again, while at the same time Figueiredo makes the weight cut, coming out completely ready to rip some heads off, and this could be 5 rounds of straight action. And yeah. I guess if there's an over-under to this fight, there's nothing I would touch with that, just because I can't really give a solid opinion if this fight ends or if it doesn't, because I want this fight to go 5 rounds.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think this is one of those fan favorite fights, and I'm glad the odds are that close. So it's making people kind of shy away from throwing their money down, and you can just enjoy it as a spectator, because this is one of those few fights, it could be once in a decade. You just want to see these guys throw it and bang it out and not worry about the rounds or who's going to finish who, or because both these guys, yeah, they're in it to win it. Moreno wants to keep that belt strapped in Mexico, and Figueiredo, like you said, is coming to take some heads. So it's y'all's choice. This dealer's choice on this one. I got nothing else to say.
Yeah, since it is a betting show, I'm gonna take Figueiredo, and I think Moreno. Yeah, so as we said, this is a fan's choice. If you don't want to bet on it, that would probably be the best bet, because it's going to be a great fight, and there's no point just sitting there for 5 rounds worrying about who's who.
Well said.
So now we get into the main event for the baddest man on the planet. We have a heavyweight title unification bout. The champion, Francis Ngannou, plus 135 versus the interim champion, Ciryl Gane, minus 155.
What a slap in the face. Good God. Those odds shocked me from the beginning. Good Lord, if that doesn't light a fire under Ngannou's ass, I don't know what will. Yeah, plus 130. That's a scary man you want to piss off. Plus 130, 16-3, won 5 out of his last 5 by knockout, mind you, against some of the top 5, top best guys UFC had to throw at him. Scariest man on the planet by far. No one's going to question that, I believe. He faces his former friend and training partner in Ciryl Gane, riding his own 10-fight win streak, and looks pretty good doing it. Not yet, I think, the most exciting. I don't think he's reached his peak of not implementing his game plan, but being exciting about it, because he has so many tools in his skill set, and he's just, I don't want to say playing it safe, but he's not as exciting as, some of the other heavyweights. Everyone knows Francis's game plan, right? To get in your face, be aggressive. And it's the sweet
Rip your fucking head off.
It's the sweet chin music. It's the devil's kiss. Once he hits you once, it's lights out for, I think, anybody on the planet. I don't think anyone will argue that. Well, you could say he'll have a 2-inch reach. I think he weighed in roughly 15 to 20 pounds heavier than Gane, but Gane's never been the most big heavyweight. He's one of the most athletic heavyweights, I think we can both agree on. And just a little more background. Ngannou's some of his most recent knockouts: Stipe, arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time; Jair Rozenstruik, Junior Dos Santos, Cain Velasquez, and Curtis Blades. So I'll let you take it away from here.
Yeah. So Ciryl Gane is undefeated in the octagon. He is 11-0. His most recent, he knocked out Junior Dos Santos with an elbow in round 2. He won a unanimous decision against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Then he won a unanimous decision against Alexander Volkov. And then he ground and pound knockout Derek Lewis to claim the belt. Like La Rochelle and I said, this is extremely disrespectful. Not only that whenever a champion is the dog, that's extremely disrespectful. Second, what Dana did by making this interim belt was extremely disrespectful. Francis had won it, and not 4 months later, there's another title fight. And if you remember, the heavyweight division is one of the most stagnant division. I mean, for the past 3 years, it has been a Stipe Daniel Cormier fight for the heavyweight belt. Nothing else has moved. Maybe Derek Lewis got his chance once. Volkov might have had one. But it's always been a stagnant division. So I find it rather odd than when you finally get a champion, especially a guy like Francis Ngannou with this crazy life story, someone that looks the part of a heavyweight champion, that you're immediately going to do an interim champion with Ciryl Gane and Derek Lewis. Now, with that being said, Ciryl Gane is legit. He moves like a welterweight. His Muay Thai is insane. His footwork is insane. His ground game's insane. He's definitely the more rounded fighter than Francis. It's honestly beautiful to watch him fight just because he's so big and he moves so light on his feet. With that being said, though, Francis literally needs one punch and your lights are out. They are former teammates. They've been babbling back and forth about that. Now with this fight, La Rochelle, I want to ask you, do you think that Francis comes out fast and hot like he usually does? Or do you think he takes a more measured approach, knowing that Ciryl Gane does know how to pick his shots?
I think there's definitely going to be a more measured approach, right? Both these guys know each other and they've trained together for years. So arguably you could say they fought 2 or 3 times, whether it be sparring or what have you, because sparring with heavyweights let's be honest, is basically a fucking fight. I don't see him coming out swinging, guns blazing immediately. There's definitely going to be a feeling out process because it's been however long since they have trained together. And both these gentlemen know what is on the line here. And I think they're both very prideful in their art. And I think there's been a lot of trash talk going back and forth, although they're both foreign, right? So they're polite about it. It's not like Nate Diaz or McGregor, the shit you want to see where they're just like, fuck you, I'm going to whoop your ass, this or that. No, it's a very measured approach the way they talk shit. I think it's going to be a very measured approach when they get in the octagon. There's going to be a lot of respect. I think fans are going to be quite anxious based upon the feeling out process. But once those fireworks start blazing, I hope Francis gets Ciryl Gane uncomfortable to the point you got to see him break out, that dog mentality to where he's not as comfortable all the time, because Ciryl wins most of his fights when he's comfortable, moving around very well. Like you said, he's athletic like a welterweight. He's very light on his feet. But Francis he's nothing short of athletic himself, even being that big. His footwork, although not as tedious and good side to side, when he comes forward like a flyweight or a lightweight. He's in your face immediately and throws with reckless abandonment. So I do believe there's going to be some sort of feeling out process and not just guns blazing from the jump.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Ciryl Gane does his best work from the outside. You don't want to be, especially at the heavyweight division where there is a lot of just brute power involved in the fighting style. It's not as technical as when you see lightweights, but when you're fighting a guy like Ciryl Gane who can move like that, it lends the advantage to him if you just stay on the outside and pick your shots. I think Francis is eventually going to have to get in, but I think I agree with you. I wanted to say that he was going to come out guns blazing, but I think with his first title defense, I think he's going to be more relaxed. I mean, when he fought Stipe that second time, he was definitely more relaxed and he felt Stipe out. And then round 2, he turned it the fuck on. Now I want to ask you this. You ready for the over under in a 5-round fight?
Yeah.
1.5.
Mm.
Over 1.5 is minus 195, minus 200. Under 1.5 is plus 165 in a 5-round fight.
I'd take the plus 165. My money's on Ngannou anyways, and the way he's finished his last 5 opponents has been relatively quick and concise. And if he does win and he does have a chance, it's going to be in those early rounds. So I would, that's the bet I'm taking. It'd be the under 1.5. If it goes longer than that, we haven't seen, right, Ngannou go 5 rounds, let alone a champion decision. So I don't think that's going to happen.
He went 5 rounds once against Derek Lewis.
Was it okay? Arguably the most boring fight on the planet ever.
Yeah.
So with Ciryl, if he drags it out in the deep waters, I don't know. I don't really care to see it because I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm a betting man. I'd take the under 1.5. And if you want to double down, I'd take Ngannou by knockout. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I want to ask before I get into the picks and going forward in this division, I have to ask you who you want to see next, but do you think Ciryl tries to get this on the ground? Because he does have a legit ground game. He has a few submission wins, and I don't think we've seen Francis on the ground.
No, that's a really good point
and Francis has been training with Usman as well.
With Usman, right? So, and Usman has 100%, 99.9% takedown defense. I think that's in the back of his head that's a possibility, and that could be the reason he's been training with Usman, because Gane does have a dangerous ground game. He pulled off that heel hook against I don't know who, but just I remember seeing that fight and it was fucking beautiful the way he set it up. But I think just shooting in for a straight double, something like that, it'd have to be like some clinch work against the fence, like lower to a single, kind of wear on him. I don't think it would happen in the first or second round. If it did, it'd be later. If Francis, couldn't get the knockout, got discouraged, got a little tired, and Gane caught him slipping. But I don't see it happening earlier in the rounds. But if it does, then props to Gane, because Ngannou's been doing the right things and training with the right people.
All right, so now with that, let's get into the picks. I'll go first. Francis Ngannou is plus money. You are taking that. That is what I am taking. That might be my max bet of the night. I'm trusting this all on Francis. Like La Rochelle said to start off this portion, if that's not going to light a fire under this man's ass, I don't know what will. I think Francis is pissed the fuck off right now, and I think he's going to come out and he's going to show Francis by knockout too, because Francis is not getting a decision win. Like, that's just not Francis's style. I think Francis at the plus money, Francis by knockout, and I think he does it within 3 rounds. I think he really puts it on Ciryl, and I think Ciryl might fade just because there's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of pressure this week on Ciryl saying former training partners, like, it's your time to shine. And Francis has kind of shown that he lives for these moments. He's already faced defeat before. And I think this might be the time that Ciryl kind of, the lights shine a little bright for the man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You'll take in the 3rd round. I'll take the under 1.5. So I'd hit that trifecta. Francis on the over, Francis by knockout, and under 1.5 rounds. I don't know what that payout would look like, but it'd be probably pretty sweet. So if you're feeling risky, there's no better fight to do it with guys that genuinely hate each other, used to train with each other, and sort of the bright lights for the heavyweight championship. Nothing else to say.
Now I got to bring in Eric La Rochelle, the expert matchmaker who calls the picks, calls the matches before they see it. No matter who wins, doesn't matter. We don't even have to say a name, but going forward, we have John Jones in the corner, and then we have Stipe at 2. What do you think the UFC does with the next heavyweight title? Doesn't matter which one wins.
Well, in my opinion, it's got to be John Jones, barring attempted murder or whatever else he hasn't had on his rap sheet yet. He's got to be the next guy in, because that was the fight to make. a year or two ago when he started building that weight, and it was either going to be him, Derek Lewis, or Gane, the other baddest man on the planet. So, in my opinion, it's got to be John Jones, barring any legal action or trouble. And then otherwise, if he's not available, Stipe's the fair decision. If he's still in it to win it and he wants it to come back, I don't see why not.
And then I guess the follow-up question, if it's John Jones, do you think Stipe retires, or do you think that Stipe would take a fight that's not a title fight at this point in his career?
I think he would retire. I think it's shown that heavyweights, sometimes they last a little bit longer, but Stipe, in my opinion, he's got nothing else to prove. He's arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time, held the belt for a long time. So at his current stage in his career, I think anything else than a title fight could just start to diminish his legacy and just not be good for his career. So at this point, he could still go out on top and secure his legacy. So I'd retire unless you get a title shot for his next fight.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is UFC 270 in the books. Lock in your picks. Odds might change. We'll see. The only real struggle this one is today is the Moreno Figueiredo. That's all on you guys. But Michel, if you want to say the last words.
That's it. Tune in tomorrow. Stream, buy it. I don't really give a fuck, but place your money through us, my friends. Let us know.
All right.